video is just to help somebody out who's asking about a foot pedal with the types of motors and motor stands that I use. So I thought I'd do this video real quick to just show how you can incorporate a foot pedal that is a momentary foot pedal. When you push down on the foot pedal, you got power. When you let off the foot pedal, it cuts the power going to the motor. I just thought others might want to see how you would set something like this up. So I was going to do the video for the person who asked about it and just put it on my channel in case anybody else wanted to see it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time editing this video. It's pretty much just raw footage. I'm just doing a voiceover on it. You won't hear the motor running. These are pretty quiet motors anyway, but I've muted it because there was background noise when I was filming. So what I've got here is just a basic setup with the motor and a speed controller in a box. That's where you control forward and reverse and the speed, and the power supply that actually goes to the speed controller and the motor. And I'm using a foot switch. You can pick these up at Harbor Freight or off of Amazon. It's a Momentary foot switch, and it has a power cord on it. You will plug that power cord into an extension cord, more than likely, unless you're lucky and have an outlet right by your workbench. So I'm plugging the foot switch into an extension cord that will be plugged into the wall. The power supply will need to plug into the foot switch, and for that you'll probably want to use another extension cord. So I just have a standard light duty lamp type extension cord that's not grounded because it doesn't need to be for this application, and I'll plug the power supply into that extension cord, and then I will plug the extension cord into the foot pedal. Now I'm just going to turn the motor controller up all the way so when I hit the foot pedal the motor comes on at full speed, and when you release the foot pedal the motor stops. There's a slight delay when you push it down before it starts and a slight delay when you let off before it stops. I'm just going to put in a piece of rod that I've got here. It's all busted up, but it's just an old piece of rod just for demonstration purposes to show you how you would use this if you were actually doing a wrap. And I'm using my rod building jigs that I sell to do this wrap with, and you can see the speed controller is not in my hand, but I'm turning it on and off with the foot pedal. Now there's a slip clutch chuck that I'm using that's made with a baby bottle. That's what I like to use, but you can use whatever you want to with one of these motors. Most of the commercial chucks that you can buy are made for a 1/4 inch shaft, so you might have to put a little masking tape on the shaft of these motors because they're 6 millimeters, which is slightly smaller than a 1/4 inch. A little masking tape on the end will take up the space difference if you're using a commercially available chuck. And hopefully you could see that as I was rotating the baby bottle that the slip clutch mechanism was allowing me to do that independent of the motor. The motor shafts on these gear motors are pretty much locked up. You can't really turn them by hand. The slip clutch chuck will allow you to turn it by hand. And I just set the tension to where it's tight enough that I can wrap with it. It's not going to slip while I'm wrapping under the thread tension, but it's loose enough that I can turn the rod by hand. And I'm just going to start this wrap by hand like you would any other wrap if you're using a hand wrapper, and get a few turns over the tag end, and then I'm going to cut that tag end off, and I'm going to use the motorized function to lay down a wrap faster than I could do it by hand. Now you want to adjust your angle to where you're pulling back against the thread that you've already wrapped. Once you get that adjusted, you can turn your motor on, and I've got the speed turned down on this, but you can turn it up like I'm showing here. You can start it or stop it at whatever speed you want to. Again, this is a 200 RPM motor. It's not extremely fast on its high speed, but it's a lot faster than you can do this by hand. So if you're laying long under wraps or something, this will go much quicker for you than if you're doing it by hand. Now I'm just going to turn the speed all the way up, and that's about as fast as it'll go. It's about 200 RPMs there. As you can see, it's laying that wrap down pretty quick compared to doing it by hand, that is. It's not going to be as fast as a power wrapper, but again, this isn't something that's going to be as costly as a power wrapper would be either. You're using your hand wrapping jig in conjunction with a motor, and it'll allow you to lay some under wraps that are pretty long a lot faster than you could do it by hand, or at least a lot faster than I can. I can't do 200 RPMs while I'm wrapping by hand, but the motor allows me to lay down a lot more thread than I can do it personally. And just for reference, this area of the rod's about 3/8 of an inch in diameter. It's not huge, but it's not terribly small either. That might give you an idea how fast you can do something like this. I just inserted my pull-through loop and started it back up to lash down that pull-through loop and cut my tag in. And I just pull mine up tight, and then I cut it short and pull it completely under so that there's no tag sticking out. Then you can tidy it up, straighten your ends up, burnish it, whatever you need to do. I'm just burnishing it just a little with my fingernails. It actually looks pretty good. I'll show you a close-up here at the end of the video of what it looks like. Hopefully you can see there how slow you can get it down to. That's about as slow as you want to go, about 20 RPMs. And I'm just demonstrating the foot pedal, turning it off and on. You'll see the light go out when I take my foot off the pedal. And I've got enough length on this to where I can run from all the way from where my motor is all the way to the end of the jig setup where the end of the rod is. I ship these out with about a 10-foot cord that goes to that speed controller box from the motor. So you should be fine on most rods. If you need something a little longer, you can get in touch with me and I see if I can make you up something a little longer. I'm going to do one more wrap here, and I'm going to demonstrate how you can back up if you make a mistake and you get a gap or something in your wrap, how you can back up using the hand wrapping jigs that I sell. They have a spring tension rod that will allow you to back up several turns, and I'll just do a demonstration of that. And I just use my hands to move my thread carriage along as I go. And my thread carriage is looser than the way I ship them out. And I did that on mine because I like to be able to move it a little easier. I open that hole up a little bigger than it needs to be, which makes the thread carriage wobbly. And I don't like shipping them out with wobbly thread carriages. If you want to sand that hole out and open it up some to make it bigger, you can do that. I just don't like sending them out with a wobbly carriage, although I do prefer to use mine that way, just because it's easier to slide it up and down on that alignment rod. I'm just kind of going through the speed, showing you how fast and slow you can adjust the speed controller. You can start out slow and then ramp it up as you see your wraps looking good. Now, I intentionally went too far ahead to make a mistake there and show you how you can back this up. You can see that thread tensioning rod raising up as I'm backing up on my turns. That keeps tension on the thread and allows you some room to back up to correct a mistake. You can readjust your angle and start it back up, and you're right back where you left off. And I'll do that again one more time just to show you. I'll pull the thread carriage ahead of a wrap with my finger there and messed it up. So now I can just back it up by hand, readjust my angle, and start it back up again and finish this wrap up. I'm just going to put my pull-through loop in and button this wrap up, and I'll come back and show you a close-up of what it looks like just using the power wrapper without really doing a lot of burnishing or moving the threads around or anything. You can see that you get a pretty good and consistent wrap using this setup. This isn't meant to take the place of a power wrapper. It's more to give you a power wrapping option if what you're using is a hand wrapper. Of course, the power wrapper is going to be a little nicer and have some little extra features that you might find handy, like being able to sand cork grips and things like that. You're definitely not going to be able to do that with this setup, but it will allow you to lay down a lot of thread in a reasonable amount of time, and it'll also help some when you're doing your epoxy work to have that 200 RPM motor. That's a good speed for most rods. That's a good speed to put your epoxy on. And here's a close-up of what those wraps look like. I think there's a piece of lint or something on the left-hand side of this area I'm showing right here, but that's not actually a gap. And this is 40 weight polyester embroidery thread, so it's pretty small diameter stuff, a little smaller than size A rod wrapping thread. You can see that's a pretty tight wrap. There's no gaps or anything there. So I hope that answers your question about using the foot pedal, and I hope maybe this video will help some other people out too. I just thought I'd post it and let people take a look at it if they were interested in something like this. And I guess I will talk to everybody later.